Murder is one of the worst human crimes throughout the ages since the beginning of creation. But organized serial killing is a much worse issue because the perpetrator has transformed from his human nature into a horrible being who enjoys killing. Their bodies too? Even if the human mind accepts the abnormal nature of the perpetrator of these crimes, how can we accept the idea that the perpetrator was writing letters to the families of his victims to tell them how delicious and good the taste of that meat was, and that he was grateful and thankful for them, and then he would send it to them? Today is Grace's 10th birthday. The little girl is getting ready to celebrate her birthday. She wears bright-colored clothes and leaves her short hair loose. The kind Uncle Frank asks Grace's family to allow him to take her to celebrate with his niece, as she is of the same age. The family does not hesitate to accept the uncle's invitation. The kind Frank, he is a friend of the family for a while and a source of trust. The secrets of the little girl are revealed to us. She learns about Uncle Frank's desire to take her. She goes with him and her smile does not leave her innocent features. "Come on, my little girl, let's eat some delicious ice cream before going to the party." The little girl sniffles with joy and eats the good ice cream from Uncle Frank. They walk together until the features of the city dissipate behind them. The little girl begins to wonder, where is the party, Uncle Frank? Uncle Frank's good features change and he attacks the little girl and is able to tie her up without much resistance. He presses on her fragile neck and it is only a few seconds until her pure soul overflows. He puts her in a mobile phone and goes back to his den of filth where he enjoys his abnormal actions. He extracts the body, the little one then begins to cut this pure body by cutting off the hands and feet and separating the head. Then he begins to cook it. He eats his meal from the meat of his victim. Then a more sick thought jumps into his sick mind. He will send a message of gratitude to the people of Jerry's for this good meat with a delicious taste. He takes a piece of paper and then writes his message. The letter remains locked in his house until he decides to send it 6 years after Grace's murder to her poor family, who are in a state of collapse after reading the details of their daughter's horrific murder. Who is sick? Albert Fish. Albert Fish is the ugliest serial killer in the history of mankind. He is an American serial killer, cannibal, and the biggest harasser of women. After his arrest, he confessed to molesting, torturing, and killing more than 400 children. Albert Fish was of a gentle appearance and his features suggest kindness. He has an acceptance that makes everyone. Whoever watches him trusts him, but behind these good features was a human wolf, a professional killer, an abuser of symptoms, and a vampire who enjoys cutting parts of his victims' bodies, cooking them, and then devouring them. Albert Fish was born on May 19, 1870 in Washington, into a family with a long history of mental illness. His uncle suffered from religious obsession, his brother lived in a mental hospital, and most of the family suffered from auditory and visual hallucinations. His parents moved away from him when he was very young. Then they sent him to an orphanage, and Albert was greatly affected by his time inside the orphanage. His memory could not erase this period of his life. The orphanage was always in Albert Fish's memory because he lived there the worst days of his life. He was subjected to beatings and torture, and although Fish was uneducated, he only taught himself to read and write. His mother, in 1880, took him out of the orphanage, but it seems that the mother took Fish out too late. When he reached the age of 12, he began to do so. Disgusting antics. He used to go to public bathrooms to see men without clothes and drink urine in a disgusting way. In 1890, Albert Fish was transferred to New York and his series of crimes against children began. Fish was always trying to keep the children away from their homes and then tortured them in different ways. He used nails, knives, and iron tools. Then he rapes them, kills them, and eats their flesh. Albert Fish married in 1898 and had 6 children. He worked as an oyster shredder. As a result of his mistreatment and abnormal behavior, his wife ran away from home. He became very angry and entered into a major psychological spiral that affected his health and mood more than it had been. Albert Fish began participating with his children in the crimes he was committing, and not only that, but he went further in his strange behavior and began torturing his children as well, which prompted them to escape from their father's hell, and they left him alone. After the end of his marital relationship and his children's distance from him, Fish continued to write letters to the newspapers explaining the actions. The strange thing is that he was describing those actions in detail, disgusting, and in a very rude manner, so his letters were never published, but when he was arrested, these letters were found, which were later considered one of the evidence against him and evidence of the psychological disorder that he was suffering from. In 1928, Albert Fish approached a family called Edward Budd, who was looking for work to improve his family's financial circumstances. Fish introduced himself as Frank Howard. He became very close to the family and became the good Uncle Frank. Fish became a source of great trust for the family. One time, Albert Fish asked the family to take their child, Grace, with him to celebrate, and they agreed without hesitation. Of course, it was the last time the family would see their daughter, as she was tragically killed. The disappearance of Grace was investigated for 6 years, and the police did not find any evidence or information clarifying the identity of the killer or where the child had disappeared. But on November 11, 1934, the Budd family received an anonymous letter, and when they read it, they were surprised that the letter contained facts and details of the killing of their child, and the sender of the message explained that he had fun. He killed the child and enjoyed eating her meat for lunch, explaining that he cooked the child's meat and ate it, expressing his great admiration for tasting this meat, describing the child's meat as one of the most delicious things he had ever eaten in his life. The strange thing is that at the end of the letter he said to the family, "Do not be sad for your child, she only ate her meat, but rest assured, Grace died a virgin." The family members collapsed as they read the details of their daughter's murder in this horrific image. This letter was the end of the legend of Albert Fish. Because of it, Fish was tracked down and reached where the police arrested him. What is strange is that he did not show any significant resistance and even confessed to killing Grace and hundreds of other children whose killers the police did not find. After Albert Fish was arrested, he was smiling happily as he described the torture that the children were subjected to at his hands. Albert Fish's trial began on March 11, 1935. Psychiatrists confirmed that Fish was suffering from insanity and he was sentenced to death by electric chair. Indeed, on January 16, 1936, Fish was executed in the electric chair in Sing Sing prison.